Good morning, everyone. You're listening to the Tusio Morning Show on 98.5 WNUW LP Aston. Of course, my name is Joe Tusio. That's why the show is given that name. On today's show, I'm going to be discussing various topics from around the NFL, maybe a little bit of Sixers at the end if I can get to it. But I'm just going to start off, of course, talking about the Eagles-Bills matchup from Sunday's game and why it pertains to their chances at the NFC East title or just a playoff berth in general overall. And it's important to understand that this game was not just important in terms of a playoff push, but it was important in terms of the whole LaShawn McCoy dynamic of him returning. And when I went into this game as a spectator, I was thinking to myself, you know, this is going to be a tough matchup for the Eagles on defense because LaShawn McCoy is coming in here with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, no pun intended. But I thought, at least from my view, I thought this was going to be a game where McCoy was going to take over. He was going to have, 150 yards rushing. It was just going to be a hard-fought match from the Bills' side. I did think that the Eagles were going to win, but I thought the score was going to be a lot different. I thought it was going to be a high-scoring game, especially considering the firepower that the Bills have and how the Eagles' defense and special teams have been playing the last 2 weeks. So when I went into it, I looked, of course, at the offensive side and the defensive side of the game. The Eagles' offense was actually pretty good. They didn't have a stupendous game. It wasn't some 45-point blowout. But they played pretty good, and it was because of the progression of Sam Bradford at quarterback. And what I mean by that is the first 2 or 3 games going into this year, I said I would give Sam Bradford until the bye week. He was coming off a big injury the year before. He was with the Rams. He didn't really show any signs of being a franchise guy that they thought he was going to be when they took him number 1 overall a few years back. And over the last 3 or 4 games that he's played, he's progressed a lot. And he showed signs of maybe being a guy that can be a good quarterback in this league. And maybe not a guy that's going to get you a $100 million deal or a guy that's going to win you a Super Bowl all on his own, but he's a guy that shows that he's getting more comfortable as each week goes by. And that's important, at least, especially considering that this is not a system for every quarterback. Tom Brady can't run this system in terms of what Chip Kelly asks him to do. I'm not saying Tom Brady can't do it because Tom Brady is arguably the best quarterback of all time. But what I mean is that you're not going to be able to have a big, tall, lengthy quarterback that can just throw, but he can't be mobile inside and outside the pocket to run this scheme. And Sam Bradford's a guy that he's still young. He's still getting his feet under him in terms of learning this scheme still. And right now, I think they're getting the best out of him. And not because of the numbers he's putting up, but just the confidence that he's showing. He's looking very confident being the leader of that offense. And he had a pretty good game. He did throw a pick in the game, but that wasn't even really a pick that was on him. That was actually a good play by the defender on the play. But besides that one pick, if you take that interception away from his stats and away from that game, he had a very effective game plan. And another thing that I liked from this game was the way they ran the ball. One of the things I said that they needed to do game in and game out if they want to succeed in this league is that they need to run the ball. And they ran the ball effectively close to 30 times by a committee of running backs. Now, I said they need to give a guy like a DeMarco Murray more carries. And maybe that's not the case now. Maybe they just need to get a lot of carries from all of their running backs. And they did that. Ryan Matthews got the majority of their carries. Now, DeMarco Murray wasn't so far behind him, but it shows that they had over 110 yards combined running, and they scored. So it shows that when you run the ball effectively, you can control the clock, you can control the tempo of the offense, and you can control how long the offense is going to be on the field. Because you can't, in any team, it does not matter who you are. If you cannot at least somewhat effectively run the ball, you're not going to win. Most teams that are, the top teams in the league, even the New England Patriots, Tom Brady may throw the ball, and he may be the guy that wins them the Super Bowls or at least gets them there. They still at least have an effective running game where if it's 3rd and 2, they know they can run the ball for that first down. And that's what the Eagles are getting to now. They're not necessarily running the ball in terms of running it for 300 yards on 58 carries and Bradford barely has to throw. No, but they're getting these effective runs where if it's 2nd and short, 3rd and short, and they need to get 3 or 4 yards, they can do that now because they have these change of pace backs. You put Matthews and Murray out there, and then you get a guy like a Darren Sproles who's a smaller guy but has more speed that can create space. And that's what they need to do. Now, I don't know at this point what you do with DeMarco Murray in terms of his value as a running back right now. For a guy that's getting paid the amount of money he's getting paid, he should be a guy that's getting the ball 30 times on his own. And if you're going to run a committee of running backs, I don't know if DeMarco Murray will necessarily like that. I don't know if that's the right choice that they're going to have to make. I don't know. But if they can run a committee of running backs from this point on and effectively do it and it helps them win games, then that's what you got to do. And if DeMarco Murray's not in your game plan, then maybe you have to trade him. Maybe. I don't know, though. Another good thing about this game was that Bradford got the ball to a lot of receivers because they don't have that number one superstar wideout like a Dez Bryant, an Odell Beckham, and Antonio Brown. And he got it to his tight ends effectively, too. Zach Ertz had a very good game. Aguilar showed signs of maybe that first round potential that they saw in him when they took him in this past year's draft. They combined to have over 16 catches for 200 plus yards, and they scored, including a 40-something yard bomb to Aguilar, which shows that Sam Bradford can throw the deep ball. And when I was watching him throw, it didn't look like it was a bad decision made. You know, when you see some quarterbacks throw, it's like, why do you throw that pass? I know it's going to be picked, or I know it's going to be batted down. It's just a bad pass. When he threw that pass, you could see that it was a confident throw, and you could see that the catch was probably going to be made, and it did. So it just shows that each week this team, this offense at least, is gaining confidence as the weeks go on. And I don't know if that's because of the health of the offense and the defense. I don't know if it's because Sam Bradford is now showing who he can be. I don't know if it's because Jeffrey Lurie or Chip Kelly got onto them and said, we need to win this game. This is what we need to do. It's all on you now. I don't know. But their offense looks a lot different than it did the first 2 or 3 weeks. And their offensive line held up well. They only allowed 1 sack. Now, the Bills' defensive line hasn't gotten a lot of sacks in this year, but they have a lot of superstar talent on that line. Mario Williams and Marcel Darius are not guys to just shrug off and say, well, they're okay defensive linemen. They might get a sack here and there. Those guys are Pro Bowl type players. They may not be putting up the numbers right now, but they have the potential to put up huge numbers every single game. And it's important to understand that their offensive line is playing good now. Their offensive line is playing smash mouth ball. They are not letting people get to Sam Bradford. They are letting him have time to throw the ball and make decisions down the field, and that's important now. That's important to understand. So it's great to see how this offense is progressing each week. Against the Patriots last week, they may not have had a great game offensively. At least in this week, their offense showed signs that, hey, we're not just going to lay down. We're not going to give up. We're going to fight the whole entire game. Now, they didn't put up amazing stats. It wasn't an offensive win for that team, but they at least played their part, which is important moving forward if they want to make a playoff run. Now, the defensive side of the ball was, to me, the more impressive part of this win. And it's important to understand that on Friday's show, I said the ways that they need to play on defense if they want to win this game is that they need to contain LaShawn McCoy, Tyrod Taylor, and Sammy Watkins down the field. And they did that for the majority of the game. Tyrod Taylor had a decent game. He didn't beat the Eagles, because obviously they didn't, because the Eagles won, but he didn't take the game all on him. It wasn't the Tyrod Taylor show and he make a crucial mistake. It was kind of, we contained Tyrod Taylor the entire game and we didn't let him beat us through the air with his feet. I mean, he only had 260 yards passing. He had a touchdown in the game, which was one of the things that they needed to contain, and they allowed it once. But other than that, he did throw a pick crucially at the end of the game, which basically sealed the victory for the Eagles in that game. Containing LaShawn McCoy was the main thing. If that guy, if they would have allowed him to run wild in this game, the outcome probably would have been different. I'm not saying the Eagles would have lost, but the outcome probably would have been different in terms of at least the score. He was only held to 74 yards rushing in the game. He did have a couple catches, which brought it up to officially 100-plus yards from scrimmage in the entire game. So, yes, he did get over 100 yards, but he didn't have a 150-yard rushing game where he took that defense on his back and said, let's go, you can't stop me. They kind of contained him the entire game. And that was one of the things that they needed to do if they wanted to win. And they did that. And then the last thing was they needed to contain Sammy Watkins in the game. For the majority of the game, they did. They allowed the long touchdown pass. But other than that, Sammy Watkins didn't blow the doors off him every single play. Yeah, he had some pretty good long, deep catches in the game, but he didn't have 5 catches for 190 yards and demolish the secondary. But Robert Woods did have a good game. He had over 100 yards on 5 catches, which, averaging out, that's probably, 20 yards, 20-plus yards per catch? That's not that good. The defense did play better. Byron Maxwell had a pretty good game, but that needs to change. They can't allow these big plays, especially in the last 3 weeks. Arizona's coming up. They're playing against a great wide receiving core and a quarterback that knows how to throw that ball in Carson Palmer, a guy who's been in the league for a long time. And they're going up against one of the best wide receivers of the last 10 years. After that, they got Deshaun Jackson and Odell Beckham. So if you want to be able to contain these teams offensively, you need to be able to contain the big play receivers. It's not that bad when you allow a little 5-6 yard pass. But when you allow the deep balls, that makes you think in your mind, okay, they're going to run past us every single play, so we're just going to have to bump off, and we're not going to blitz, and we're not going to send everything up to the quarterback, which allows the run. So you need to at least contain the majority of big plays. You allow one play here or there, yeah, that needs to be changed, but you're not giving up the big play every single time. So if you can contain the big plays on the offensive side of the ball from your defense, and if your offense continues to progress the way it has been, I think you have a chance of winning the NFC East. That's what they need to do. Now, they have a crucial game coming up on Sunday night against the Arizona Cardinals, and that's going to be a tough game. I'm not going to automatically say that the Cardinals are going to win, but if the Eagles play tough like they did last week and this Sunday's game, I think they have a chance of maybe pulling an upset, but we'll have to see. Now, in this week of football, there have been a lot of interesting storylines to follow as the weeks go on, and one of the things that is just so impressive to me is the way that the Carolina Panthers are each week just seem to show why they are probably the best team in the NFL right now. And it's important to look at the Panthers are not one of those teams where they have a lot of superstar talent. There are teams in the league where you can name 10, 15 guys on the team that are like, man, these guys could be Pro Bowl type players. The Panthers are just dominating games. I mean, if you're winning games here and there by like a score of 24-21 and you're losing, that's a different perspective. But when you're beating these teams the way that they are each week, it just shows the dominance that this team has. And what's so just amazing to think about and just to conceptualize is that Cam Newton is doing this on offense without his best receiver. If Kelvin Benjamin was on this team, they might be putting up 40-plus points every single week. They might be. Now, there are some quarterbacks that at times look better when they have less because they don't have the pressure of throwing the ball to their number one guy because that's what people want to see. But if Kelvin Benjamin was on this offense, I can't even think about how good this offense and how good this team might be, even better than they are right now. And their defense right now is probably the best defense in the league. And Cam Newton arguably should be the front runner for the MVP right now. I mean, the guy has just progressed from his rookie year until now. And Ron Rivera, the work that he has done with this team is just incredible. He might be coach of the year. Cam Newton might be the MVP. And they might be able to go undefeated. Now, they have some of their remaining games are division games, and division games are always played tough. And it's usually one of those things where there's usually an upset here or there between a division game because the division is more important at times than just a normal conference or league game. So it's just going to be interesting and intriguing to see if the Panthers can finish out this year undefeated going into the year as a 16-0 team. I mean, it would just be incredible to see the progression that this team has gone from Cam Newton being drafted, them being the worst team in the league because they had the number one pick, to now being the best team in the league and they haven't lost yet. There are just so many intriguing storylines so far. The Seahawks, in the first 5 or 6 games, you could have said that they were one of the struggling teams of the league. Their identity was getting lost. Russell Wilson may not be the guy that he was when they won a Super Bowl 2 or 3 years back. And now, over the last 3 or 4 games, they have just taken over teams. And they are just rolling through each week. And this is one of those teams in the NFC where I don't think you want to play. The Panthers and the Seahawks right now are one of those are two of those teams where if you're a 7th or an AC and you have to play them, good luck. Because right now they are rolling. And the crazy thing about the Seahawks right now is that they're doing it without arguably their best receiver in Jimmy Graham, who has been blocking over the last 2 or 3, he's been blocking this whole year. He really hasn't found his rhythm yet. And they've done it without Marshawn Lynch, and Thomas Rawls is now out, and they still won. They still dominated. It is incredible. Russell Wilson right now, it's probably him and Cam Newton for the race for the MVP. Tom Brady, of course, is going to be up there because it's Tom Brady, and there's no argument when it comes to that kind of guy. But right now, Wilson and Newton would be my 2 finalists for the MVP race. To me, I would give it to Cam Newton right now just because the way they're playing and the way and the fact that they haven't lost a game yet. But Russell Wilson would be a definite, a close second if Newton was not to win it. And then, unfortunately, Andy Dalton sustained a hand injury, which may keep him out for the remainder of the year. It's a big loss to this Bengals team because Andy Dalton is definitely their guy on offense. They have A.J. Green. Their running game's pretty good, and their defense is been playing pretty well of the last 2 or 3 games. But Andy Dalton is definitely the glue that keeps that offense going and is definitely keeps them together as a team. And if you lose a guy like that, and not even just the way that he plays, not even the numbers that he puts up, but the leadership that he gives to that team is a big loss too. AJ McCarron may be able to put up decent numbers, but the leadership that Andy Dalton puts out each week for that team is just incredible. And if you lose a guy like that, it's going to be hard for them to rebound the remainder of the year. And it's a tough race in the AFC North. So if you want to win that division with the Steelers playing the way they are now, you have to put up some good offensive numbers now, and you have to play tough defense, especially considering that the Steelers may have one of the best offenses in the league right now. And it ain't going away anytime soon. And one of the other big storylines, especially from at least this week, but throughout the whole year, is that Khalil Mack is suddenly becoming one of those elite defensive players. You have a J.J. Watt, a Richard Sherman, an Earl Thomas, a Darrelle Revis, a Von Miller. But right now, Khalil Mack is looking like a superstar. Considering that, I was talking this with somebody, I wonder if, this is just me, but I wonder if the Texans were to redo the number 1 pick, would Clowney still have gone 1? Knowing what you know now, would Clowney still have gone 1? To me, if I was the Texans, Mack would be my guy because he fits the defensive scheme that you're playing, and he's just a freak of nature, man. Just the way he plays, he's physical, he's got speed, and he's not even that big either because right now he plays like a hybrid defensive end linebacker role. And the guy is just a monster on the field. And it's just incredible to see how he's making this Raiders defense just play some good ball against some pretty good teams. Right now, the Denver Broncos are a really good team, a playoff contending team. And Khalil Mack was getting in Brock Osweiler's face the entire game. He had 5 sacks. 5 sacks. There are some guys in the league that have played the whole year and don't even have 5 sacks. I mean, the guy has 60 tackles and 14 sacks in 13 games or 14 games. He's having an incredible year. To me, he would be my vote for Defensive Player of the Year, but that's just me. And finally, one of the things I want to talk about is how the New York Jets have suddenly become a team to watch for with Ryan Fitzpatrick as their quarterback. When Geno Smith came out in the draft, I particularly, to be honest, I was a Geno Smith fan. I said he should have been the number 1 pick in that year's draft when the Chiefs took Eric Fisher, not number 1. I thought Geno Smith should have been number 1. I still think that Geno Smith can be a decent quarterback in this league. But the way that Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing right now is on another level. And I'm not saying a level of Cam Newton or Russell Wilson or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick, with the weapons that he has with Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, with a run game that's decent that can catch the ball, he is slowly becoming probably the second best quarterback in the AFC East. Ryan Tannehill's there, Tyrod Taylor's there, but right now Ryan Fitzpatrick is probably giving Tom Brady a run for his money when it comes to the Jets right now because the Jets are one of those teams where they can come out of nowhere and make a run, folks. And that's one of those teams where I don't know if you want to play them either. And it's not necessarily because Ryan Fitzpatrick's a superstar, but it's just that the way that they're playing right now on both sides of the ball, their defense is kind of spotty here and there. They have a lot of good superstars on defense, but it may not be playing up to the level that they thought it would be. But their offense right now is just putting up big numbers game in, game out. So it's amazing to see how Ryan Fitzpatrick has taken this team from being an okay team to being a playoff contending team. Now, with the NFL season coming to an end here in the next 2 or 3 games, next 2 or 3 weeks, I want to discuss the NFL rookies that have been playing so far in this year's 2015 season and how they have progressed from week 1 until now. And just listen, at least from what I've seen, the top 10 rookies from 1 to 10. Now, this isn't by anybody's grading. This isn't anybody's chart. This is my list. This is what I think. This is who I think should be probably rookie of the year all the way down to a guy at the number 10 spot who has probably progressed the most. So, to me, the number 1 rookie right now is Jameis Winston. And that's not a notion to say that Marcus Mariota hasn't played better than him. I just think the way that Jameis Winston has rallied this team this year is just incredible because the Bucs last year had the worst record, and right now they're fighting for a playoff spot. And one can argue that they have the same talent, with the exception of a couple draft picks and maybe one or two signings. But this isn't a revamped team that signed 50 guys in this offseason or had 5 first-round picks. Winston was their first pick. They took an offensive lineman in the second or third round. They had Mike Evans from last year's draft. They had Doug Martin still. And their defense, for the most part, was the same from last year. And right now they're fighting for a playoff spot. And Jameis Winston doesn't put up the MVP numbers. He's not going to put up 7,000 yards and throw for 50 touchdowns. No. He's going to have the 3,000, 3,500, maybe 4,000 in a great year. He's going to throw for maybe 25 touchdowns. He's going to throw a pick here and there. But the way that he rallies the team, they could be down by 20 points and he can rally them to come back and win. And he can do it by, passing. He can do it with his feet. He can run. He can make good throws. Just the way he's progressed this year is my reasoning why he's deserving of the number 1 spot, at least on my list. Now, Marcus Mariota is not far behind. He's number 2. And the reason why I put him at number 2 and not Winston at number 1 is because of the impact that he's had on his team. Mariota is a fantastic quarterback, and it was the right choice that the Titans should have, and it's quite frankly the right pick. I don't know if Zach Mettenberger would have been the right quarterback for this team, but Marcus Mariota, he's a dynamic guy. He can run. I mean, he's got speed that kills when it comes to the quarterback spot. He did it in the last game when he ran for an 80-something yard score. I mean, that's rare for a quarterback to do. And he can catch, and he can throw, and he's a leader. So he's a guy that is a dynamic quarterback for a team that needs him. So he's going to make a big impact on this team, but it just doesn't show in terms of how they're playing on the field. And his stats arguably are better than Winston's right now, but it's just the impact that Winston has on the Buccaneers is a little bit better than Mariota has on the Tennessee Titans right now. So that's why I put Mariota 2 and not 1. And number 3, at number 3, I actually have Todd Gurley at the number 3 spot. I could make an argument that Todd Gurley could be number 1 right now because the guy right now is probably the second or third best running back in the league. And I'm not saying this year in terms of skill set and the way he plays and the impact that he has on his team. He could be the second or third best running back in the league in general. I mean, the guy is playing crazy football. Over the last 2 games or so, he didn't have great numbers, but in this last game, he put up very good numbers. Had, I believe, over 140 yards rushing and scored. The impact that he puts on the Rams team is just incredible, especially considering that the quarterback spot isn't really putting up great numbers. So Todd Gurley kind of supplements what the quarterback can be doing for this team. And it's definitely a running back that was chosen in the top 10 and is rightfully so deserving of that pick because right now he's probably the best player on offense that the Rams have. And number 4, I have Amari Cooper right now. And Amari Cooper, why I have him at 4 is that he was taken in the top 5 as a wide receiver, which is kind of one of those questionable picks because sometimes wide receivers are kind of hit and miss. You may take a guy in the 3rd round that's some superstar guy, or you may take a guy at top 5 that's he's not that good. Amari Cooper's that good. I mean, he put up rookie numbers that the Raiders haven't seen in a long time. He's Derek Carr's go-to guy. He just makes that wide receiving core a lot better, a heck of a lot better, and he makes that offense a heck of a lot better because that's who teams got a game plan for. The Raiders 2 or 3 years back didn't really have that stud receiver, but now they have him in Amari Cooper, and now that Michael Crabtree's there too, you have a great tandem at wide receiver that Derek Carr is going to be able to grow with for the next 7 to 10 years. At my number 5 spot, I have Thomas Rawls. Now, Thomas Rawls was a guy that came out of nowhere. When Marshawn Lynch got hurt, Thomas Rawls came in, did not miss a beat on that offense. The Seahawks did not miss a beat. They gave that ball to Thomas Rawls just like they gave it to Marshawn Lynch, and he ran that ball angry. He ran that ball, as hard as he could, and he's deserving of at least consideration for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't know if he's necessarily going to get it, but he should at least be considered for it because the Seahawks offense runs through the running game. And when Marshawn Lynch went down, people were probably saying to themselves, man, I don't know what's going to happen. Marshawn Lynch he's hurt now. I don't know if this guy Rawls is going to be able to come in and put up the numbers that they need. And he did. And it's at least, and one might even consider maybe Marshawn Lynch won't be there. If he wants more money or he wants the ball, maybe Thomas Rawls is their guy now, especially considering he's younger than Lynch right now, and he's still on a rookie deal. So maybe that's the better choice that the Seahawks can go with. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out in the offseason. Now, at number 6 and 7, this is where it kind of gets tricky because my number 6 and 7 picks are kind of iffy in terms of the way that they've played because they've actually been opposite this year. At number 6, I have Stephon Diggs, and at number 7, I have Tyler Lockett. And why I say it's kind of tricky with the number 6 and number 7 is because in the first half of the year, Stephon Diggs was lighting up the NFL. Some people had him being maybe better than Amari Cooper in some sense because he can play in the slot, he can play on the outside. He's kind of like a Jarvis Landry type player. We can play all along the wide receiving core. He doesn't have to be a number 3. He can be a number 1 if they even need him to be. And that's what he was for a few weeks, and he was playing very good ball. Now, over the last 3 or 4 games, he hasn't been that guy. And that's why Tyler Lockett can be flipped with Diggs in this spot. He can go to 6 if you want him to be, because over the last 2 or 3 games, Lockett's been putting up pretty good numbers. Lockett came in being a special teams return guy that could sort of be a Devin Hester type guy, but now he's showing that wide receiving threat that he can be, that he was in college before he was taken in this year's draft. So 6 and 7 can kind of be interchanged depending on how the year finishes out. And from 8 through 10, I'm ending with some defensive players. A lot of the top 6 or 7 have been offensive guys. Time to get some defensive guys on this list. Number 8, I have Eddie Goldman at number 8. And right now, Eddie Goldman's probably the most productive defensive lineman in this rookie class. There were guys like Leonard Williams and Danny Shelton and Eric Armstead that were taken before him. And while their potential might be better than Goldman right now, Goldman's putting up the numbers. He is one of the best rookies right now in getting to the quarterback, and that's tough considering that he's a nose tackle. Nose tackles are usually the guys that clog the holes and allow defensive ends and outside linebackers to get to the quarterback. But Eddie Goldman's the guy that's running right up the middle and sacking the quarterback. So Eddie Goldman he's definitely deserving of this spot, considering that his potential was a first round pick, but he was taken in the second round. And number 9, I have Marcus Peters. Now Marcus Peters was a guy that his off the field issues may have been maybe why he wasn't taken that. I mean, his potential was top 10. He was taken a little bit later in the draft by the Chiefs. But the way he plays is definitely of a potential number 1 cornerback in this league. And then at number 10, I'm rounding out with Vic Beasley, who was taken by the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is a guy that potential-wise and body type-wise, he is an athletic freak. The guy is built to be a perfect outside linebacker, defensive end, Khalil Mack type of role. And I put him at 10 because he may not be putting up the numbers that they thought he probably should be, but his potential is still there. And going into next year, he might be the best pass rushing threat that the Falcons have. And all this discussion about the rookies in this year's season just brings me to my next topic, which will probably end we'll probably end the show here, is a look back at the 2015 draft, and I'm going to do a little bit of a redraft from picks 1 to 19 and how this affects the Eagles' pick. If Aguilar is their guy, or if they look at somebody else that might fit the team in a better role depending on their needs. And I'm looking at a team, I'm looking at each team going down the list, and I'm looking at who they would draft looking at the way the rookies are playing now. Not, oh, would you go back in time and take this guy not knowing? No, it's not knowing. It's would the Bucks still take this guy with this pick knowing that he's going to be this? So to me, picks 1 and 2 stay the same. Winston and Mariota stay picks 1 and 2 simply because the teams need quarterbacks, and those are the two best quarterbacks in this year's draft. And right now, they look like potential franchise players for their team. So they stay with that pick. And number 3, this is where things this is where the first change happens in terms of where I look at. To me, I think the Jaguars took Dante Fowler with 3. Unfortunately, he went down with a bad injury before the year started, so he's not able to play, so they don't really know what they have in a guy like him. But they had a TJ Yeldon in the draft as well, who's been a good young back for him. But this is where I think Todd Gurley goes. I think if you supplement Todd Gurley with the Jaguars offense right now, I think their offense runs at a better pace, and I think they are a lot different. Because not only does Blake Bortles have the potential to throw to the running backs or throw to the wide receivers and tight ends that he has now, but then he has the threat of a Todd Gurley running on that offense. If you put a Todd Gurley on that offense, they might be a top 5 offense in the league, especially considering that they're all young guys. This isn't a team where they have one 30-year-old wide out and then a young guy and a young... No, this is a bunch of young guys playing together. You put another young guy in there in Todd Gurley, who has potential to be an Adrian Peterson type guy. There goes your offense. You have a top 5 offense now for the next 7 to 10 years. There you go, Jaguars. And you can go and get a guy in the second round who can maybe supplement that pass rushing role that Dante Fowler was probably going to be. And number 4, I think the Raiders stay the same. I think they take Amari Cooper at 4. I think he's just the wide receiver that the Raiders need at this time, and his potential is still there. The relationship that he built with Derek Carr and Michael Crabtree right now is definitely important for this team. So Amari Cooper stays there at 4. 5 and 6 is where it kind of changes again. The Redskins took Brandon Scherf with this pick, but Washington is going to go another route, and they're going to go with Leonard Williams. Now, Leonard Williams is a defensive end who was taken by the Jets, actually, with the pick after Washington. And I think this is a guy where, yeah, Brandon Scherf is a good young offensive guard, a guy that's probably has the potential to be a Pro Bowl player, but the Redskins need help on this defense. If they want to stop the run, they want to get to the quarterback, Terrence Knight and Stephen Pye are making some good plays for him, but Leonard Williams gives him that other dynamic where if you're going to put a Ryan Kerrigan out on the outside linebacker spot, Williams can play on the opposite side and get as much pass rush, which causes havoc for the quarterbacks in the NFC East, especially considering that you're playing against Eli Manning, Tony Romo, Bradford in that running game. You need defensive help. An offensive line is important to have, but if your defense can't stop the offenses, well, there's no point of playing then. At 6, this is where I think Dante Fowler goes. I think the Jets need help in the pass rushing spot. They have a good young defensive line, and I just think that they need a good outside linebacker, defensive end, hybrid type of player that Fowler is. And necessarily, and see, here's the beauty of it. Now, if Fowler's taken by the Jets, maybe he doesn't get hurt. But all things considering, let's say Dante Fowler is remaining hurt. Let's say he doesn't play for the Jets even though the Jets take him and he's out for the entire year. I don't think the Jets necessarily need to start him at every single play, especially this year. I think the way that the offense has been playing, I think you can supplement, I think you can intertwine the way that the offense is played with the defensive players that they currently have, and Fowler can learn and grow. And then going into next year, that's when you can put him in there, and you can put him to be the pass rushing threat that they need him to be. And number 7, I think the Bears stick with Kevin White. Granted, he hasn't played yet. We don't know. They don't know if he's the future Julio Jones. That's why they got rid of Brandon Marshall's gone. So they need a wide receiver to take over his spot. I think Kevin White's potential is still there. I think he has the potential to be a top 10 wide receiver, but we have to wait and see. He has the size, he has the skills, and he puts in the hard work, and he wants to play, but I think the health is the most important thing in terms of him playing this year, if he plays at all this year, and his health is definitely going to determine, if he plays one snap this year, if he's done for the entire year. But I think the Bears stick with Kevin White at pick number 7. At pick number 8, I think the Falcons go with a pass rusher still. I don't think Vic Beasley goes here. I think Alvin Dupree or Bud Dupree, whatever you want to call him, I think Alvin Dupree goes here at number 8. I think he's a guy that I think the Falcons kind of play that Seahawks type of defense where Dan Quinn came over and he utilizes some of the defensive concepts that the Seahawks use. So it's kind of like a 3-4-4-3 hybrid, and I think Bud Dupree plays that scheme better than Vic Beasley does. I think Vic Beasley is more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, and I think Dupree is more of a hybrid guy, has more size to him, has shown a little bit of more skill, put up some better stats in this year. So I think Bud Dupree goes at number 8. And he's a guy that could have gone anywhere from 5 to 25, depending on if the team wants him. And I think he probably would have gone in the top 10. I think the Giants stick with Eric Flowers at number 9. They need offensive line help. Eric Flowers is probably the best offensive tackle in that year's draft. Giants stick with him. Not much to debate with that pick. At number 10, this is where it gets kind of weird because Todd Gurley was originally at this spot. And since Todd Gurley, in my redraft, went to the Jaguars number 3, I think the Rams stick with a running back, but I think they go with TJ Yeldon. And people are going to say, Joe, you skipped over Melvin Gordon? How could you do that? Yes, I skipped over Melvin Gordon. Yeldon is a dual threat guy, kind of like a Matt Forte type of guy. I think he's a guy that has a lot of skill. In college, he helped run the Alabama offense. A guy that can catch the ball, he can block, he can run, he has speed, power. He does a little bit of everything well, and I think that helps out the Rams offense a lot. I picked number 11. The Vikings went with the cornerback and Trey Waynes in the actual draft. In my draft, they're going to go with Marcus Peters, so they stick with the cornerback, but they go with a guy that has a little bit more skill, a guy that's a little bit more proven right now, and a guy that they can put out there against Alshon Jeffrey, Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, Randall Cobb, the guys that they play against in this division, and I think Marcus Peters helps out their secondary a lot better. Trey Waynes has potential to be that guy, but right now he's not showing it. The Browns at number 12 went with Danny Shelton in the 2015 draft. I think they go with Eddie Goldman at number 12. I think Eddie Goldman is a guy that he may not have the necessary potential that Shelton has, seeing as Shelton's a much bigger guy. But Eddie Goldman is just a guy that he's just proving to be that anchor that the Browns need. And he's a guy that can play every snap for him. And that's what he's doing for the Bears right now. He's predominantly playing a lot of their snaps at nose tackle, starting for him. And that's what the Browns need, and I think that's what he could be doing for the Browns in this redraft. The Saints at number 13 went with Andrus Peat. Now, Andrus Peat's still has potential to be a good left tackle, but I'm going out of bounds here. I'm going with an offensive line. I'm going with an offensive lineman still. I'm not going with Scherf. I'm not going with Pete. I'm going with Lael Collins. Yes, the undrafted superstar, the guy that could have been a top 5 pick, but there were some issues off the field that people didn't know what to think of. They didn't know what was going to happen. I think you go with Andrus Peat at this spot. You can slot him in immediately left tackle, and he can be a Pro Bowl player for you. Now, if you don't go with Collins at this pick, then maybe get him like the second round. But I think Collins is worthy of a first-round pick, and I think he would go to the Saints at this spot, knowing how good he's playing with the Dallas Cowboys right now. The Dolphins at 14 went with Devontae Parker. To me, I'm not going to say it's a bust of a pick because Parker's been hurt, and over these last 2 games when he's played, he's been playing pretty good. But the way that Landry's playing, Rashard Matthews has come out of nowhere and been a very reliable guy. They still have these guys that can play, catch the ball pretty good. So I don't know if Devontae Parker is necessarily a need at this spot. So I'm going to go a little bit of an unknown. Kwan Alexander. Now, this was a guy that is playing for the Bucks right now. He's having a fantastic year. Wasn't a first-round pick, but is right now maybe one of the best young linebackers in this league. Is a rookie right now. Is probably top 20 in tackles, and is just a leader on the team. He rallies the linebacking core, and he could be a day one starter on this Dolphins linebacking core, considering that they need help at that spot. And maybe you go out and get a wide receiver in the second round. Maybe Devontae Parker falls. Who knows? But I think Kwan Alexander would definitely be a good pick at number 14 for the Miami Dolphins. Now I'm going to go. The Chargers are up next. They took Melvin Gordon at this spot. I'm going to go with a running back. And I'm going to go with a running back that maybe not a lot of people really know right now. But I wouldn't go with Melvin Gordon, at least right now. I think he could still be a first-round pick in my redraft. I just don't know if he's worthy of being a top 15 pick. Now, to me, the Arizona Cardinals have a running back named David Johnson. Now, David Johnson, to me, he was a very underrated back coming out in this year's draft. I thought he could have been I thought his potential could have been a first-round pick. I think his potential still could be a first-round pick if they were to redo this draft. He's a Matt Forte type of back. He's big, strong, can catch, can block. He's actually kind of like a Matt Forte copycat in terms of his size and the way that he plays. And I think that the Chargers could utilize that a lot better because he's a guy that can line up at wide receiver if you really need him to. He can block, he's got speed, he's got power. I think that's the wide receiver that the Chargers could use when Danny Woodhead is not in the game. At 16, the Texans took Kevin Johnson in the draft. And I think they still go with a secondary player here, but they're going to go with Ronald Darby. Now, Ronald Darby was a second-round pick from the Bills, and he's a guy that is slowly becoming a very good young cornerback. And he was even a cornerback I was considering putting in my top 10 rookies to watch for the remainder of the year. And right now he's starting for the Bills. He's not a big guy, but he plays hard. And he just has skills that he just has every tool that I think the Texans could use right now, and he could probably start for him day one and help out that defense that's led by J.J. Watt. Now at 17, the 49ers are up. They took Eric Armstead with the first-round pick. I don't necessarily think that they need him. I think they could use him, but I don't think that they need him. So I think this is where Devontae Parker goes. I think if it's Kaepernick or Blaine Gabbert, whoever is the quarterback of this team, I think Parker gives them a big weapon that they can rely on. Bolden is getting old, or at least old. He's getting older. He's not going to be in the league for another 15 years. They need that guy to replace Bolden when he's gone, and Parker can be that guy. At 18, the Chiefs took Marcus Peters, but he already went to the Vikings at number 11. So they're going to go with Mario Edwards. Now, Mario Edwards is a defensive end, outside linebacker type of hybrid for the Raiders right now. He was a second-round pick. He's a guy to me that has a lot of skill. He's not big enough to be a defensive tackle. He's not small enough to be an outside linebacker. So he's kind of like that Pernell McPhee for the Bears type of role. He can play in multiple schemes. He has a lot of skill. He can tackle very well. He can force fumbles. He can sack the quarterback. He has speed, power. He's a versatile guy. And I think that's what the Chiefs could use, considering that Tamba Hali is not going to be there forever. And he's a guy that can take over Tamba Hali's spot once he's gone. And right before the Eagles at number 20, the Browns at 19, they're going to take Byron Jones. Now, Byron Jones is the cornerback, safety, whatever you want to call him, that the Cowboys took in the first round. He was the guy at the draft combine that did the crazy jump. He broke records with it. I think he's, again, a versatile guy, can play cornerback, safety. He can just do a little bit of everything. He's got skill. He's a young guy. He still needs to develop what role he's actually going to play. But I think when you get him on this team, Hayden's kind of iffy right now. He's hurt here and there. So I think they need a secondary guy that can be a developmental guy that can be their leader in the secondary soon. And I think Byron Jones can take that spot. Now with the Eagles at the 20th pick, they have a lot of options. Aguilar still there. Maybe they go with Jordan Hicks. Hey, he's a superstar for the Eagles right now, or at least when he was playing. He's hurt right now. But with the redraft, you still have guys like Trey Waynes, Danny Shelton, Melvin Gordon at running back, Brandon Scherf, Andrews Pete, Kevin Johnson, Shane Ray, Philip Dorsett, and Dorial Green Beckham. Those are a lot of guys that Eagles can look at. If wide receiver is what you want, I think you got to go with a Dorial Green Beckham. At least to what I like. He's a big guy. He can be a franchise wideout. I mean, the guy's 6'6", 230 pounds. He has a Calvin Johnson type size. He's got a lot of skill. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the superstar day one, but I think eventually he can mold himself into that role. If not, you can always look at a Shane Ray, who can be an outside linebacker, help for you. You can look at Andrews Pete or Brandon Scherf to help out this offensive line. You can look at Melvin Gordon if DeMarco Murray's not your guy, if you need a running back. It's interesting to see where they would go. So they could probably go Hicks in the first round, and it would be a great pick there. So it's just interesting to see the options that the Eagles could have had, at least in at least what I would see in this redraft, depending on how the rookies are playing right now. I am out of time, guys. This is my last show for this semester at Newman. I want to thank everybody for listening in, all the support that anybody's ever shown me here. I should be back next semester doing my show. But for this time being, I want to thank everybody for listening in. One last time, listen to 98.5 WNUW LP Aston.